everybody, what's going on? I am Gregg Sussman, joined today by Jim Sonis of FanDuel as he helps me break down the Tour Championship. What's happening, Jim?
Been a pretty fun season, Greg. So I'm excited to wrap things up here at the Tour Championship. Pretty interesting format. Justin Thomas starting this thing at 10 strokes under par. Patrick Cantlay is 8 under, and that's a lot to juggle, but the salaries do at least partially account for that on FanDuel. So I'm pretty interested to see how things play out here. It should be a fun event to watch as well.
It's going to be awesome to see how it all shakes out, who winds up winning this one. It's going to be awesome. So let's break it down. Let's go over your top stud in DFS this weekend at the Tour Championship. Who you got?
Yeah, I think you have to give a long consideration to Justin Thomas because, again, he is 10 under par to start this thing off, but his salary accounts for that at $14,200. And for $2,100 less, you can get Brooks Koepka. And Koepka does start 3 strokes behind Justin Thomas, but we talk about Brooks Koepka in events where he has motivation and how good he is there. And there's not a lot of motivation better than the $15 million that goes to the golfer who wins this event. So Brooks Koepka, we're probably going to see good Brooks this weekend. He's probably going to get a couple of rounds of practice in before Thursday as well. Koepka ranks 4th in the field in distance over the past 50 rounds per Fantasy National. He's also been good in approach, and that even counts in the events where he maybe hasn't had the best motivation. But even in those events, we've still seen Koepka finish 30th and 24th the past 2 weeks. So you're giving me Brooks Koepka at a bit of a discount at $12,100. I think he is well worth that. His win odds are 5-1 at FanDuel Sportsbook. He is fully capable of chasing down Justin Thomas. So I'm going to have a lot of Justin Thomas this week too. But when I don't go there, I think that Brooks Koepka is going to be my number one guy for this week.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a week the good Brooks shows up because there's a lot on the line. He could catch Justin Thomas, as you said. It's a big spot for Brooks, so expect a big-time outing. I really like getting Brooks in our lineups this week. But if you don't want to go with Brooks and you want to go in another studly direction, which direction could that be?
Yeah, there are really 3 tiers at the top here from a salary perspective. Justin Thomas by himself, and then Patrick Cantlay and Brooks Koepka in that second tier. The third tier is kind of Rory McIlroy all by himself at $11,400. He is starting this thing at 5 strokes under par, so he is 5 strokes behind Justin Thomas. But I think with McIlroy being $11,400, he doesn't necessarily need a win to pay off, whereas Justin Thomas, Brooks Koepka, and Patrick Cantlay more so do because they are quite a bit more expensive than McIlroy. But McIlroy been golfing really well since that implosion at the Open. He has finished 4th, 6th, and 19th in those 3 events since then. And he knows East Lake pretty well because he did win here back in 2016 and also finished 7th last year. McIlroy is good off the tee. He can go long, which I do want for this weekend. He is an awesome approach player. So $11,400, I think, is a very fair salary for McIlroy, even once you account for the 5 strokes he is behind Justin Thomas. He could make that up for sure, but I think that McIlroy is cheap enough where he can pay off even without winning this event. So McIlroy at 11.4 is a really good second stud to plug in after you get Justin Thomas, Patrick Cantlay, or Brooks Koepka.
Absolutely. All those guys inside that top tier, they are worth starting this week. Rory McIlroy in the mix here as well. If you're not going with Brooks, Rory makes a ton of sense. Let's move down to the mid-tier here, Jim, and we'll get to Tony Finau. You're still pushing along here, man.
Yeah, and he's been pushing along a lot better recently because we've been to some courses that are a bit longer, which play better to his strengths. Last week was a course where I was emphasizing distance, and Finau popped there. He finished 4th. And he finished 4th despite losing 3.9 strokes putting, which is kind of just insane to me. He has gained 10 strokes tee to green, more than 10 strokes, actually more than 11 and a half strokes in 2 of his past 4 events. And this is a course that should suit Finau pretty well, and it has suited him well in the past. He was 7th here in 2017. He was 15th last year, which is not great in a 30-person event, but it's also not terrible and shows that his distance can play well at this type of course. And I'm not expecting Finau to putt well this weekend because he generally does not do well on the surface, but his salary is $9,500, and he is going to put himself in the position to get some birdies. So if Finau can just sink a couple of putts, he could pay off really well. I think that Finau at $9,500 makes a lot of sense. He'll start this thing at 3 under. That is the same place as Dustin Johnson, who is 10-1. I also like him quite a bit. Also, Hideki Matsuyama is at 3 under. Finau is cheaper than both those guys at 95. I think he has the ability to go low. So Tony Finau at another course where distance does matter at least a little bit. I think I'm going to go right back to him once again this weekend.
Finau has been finally playing better, and I feel like, Jim, you were the one that kind of saw this coming, man.
Yeah, I use Tony Finau more than I should. So I think that I can always have that excuse of, oh, I saw that coming. And then I'll just ignore the events where I use when he does poorly. So I will take that, Greg, and we will ignore the times where I've said to use Tony Finau and it hasn't gone so well.
You're always the positive one when it comes to anybody. And Tony Finau, no exception, playing better as of late, making you look good, making us look good. More importantly, letting us win money. Tony Finau, a solid mid-tier option this week. Staying in that middle tier, we get to Adam Scott, who is 33-1 to win this. Spoiler alert, what's coming up later. But Adam Scott, why do you like him this week?
Yeah, Adam Scott's probably safer than Tony Finau, and they're both starting in the same spot because they are both -3. And Scott, among those golfers who are starting at 3 under, is actually the second cheapest for this week. And I think that that's pretty advantageous because he has the kind of stats that I want for this event at East Lake. He ranks 13th in the field in driving distance the past 50 rounds, according to Fantasy National. He is also 5th in approach and 7th in scrambling. Those are all really good numbers, even when we account for how small the field is. And Scott also enters with really good current form because he has finished 5th and 9th the past 2 weeks. So the good form is there. And you can look at Adam Scott recently at East Lake, and he hasn't been here the past 2 years. Maybe that could be a concern for you. But once you dig back deeper, you see he was here in 2016. He was here a bunch before that, including a win back in 2006. Now, I don't care about that win in 2006. That's so long ago, it does not matter. But knowing that he has been here a lot of times and has been here decently recently does say that he should fit this course really well. He knows this course. He has won here before. All those things are positive factors for Scott at $9,300. I think that he is a safer play than Finau. Finau may have higher upside, but Scott at 93 has the ability to climb the leaderboard, and at 3 under and $9,300, I like that quite a bit. So Adam Scott is someone I do think I'll have quite a bit of as well this weekend.
If you want safety, Adam Scott will get you there. Tony Finau's upside, as you said, probably higher, but in that middle tier, doesn't get much safer than Adam Scott as long as he has that putter working. Let's move on to the value tier here, Jim, and it's a big-time tournament, so I was hoping for some of our favorites, and you didn't let me down as Gary Woodland returns to the value spot.
Yeah, Jason Kokrak's minimum salary, Greg. I'll just throw that one out there for you. Corey Connors is 7-4. So some of the heat check favorite, the hurry up favorites are in here as well. We could talk about them for sure. But Gary Woodland, I was into him last week. I believe we talked about him here and didn't go so hot. He finished 31st. And Gary Woodland has not had a top 30 finish since he won the U.S. Open. But there are only 30 golfers in the field, so I'm pretty sure he'll get a top 30 this weekend. If he doesn't, well, some pretty serious issues. But this weekend, we should see things turn around for Woodland. And once again, in that event last week, he was still decent on his approach. He has actually gained strokes in approach 4 times in his 5 events since that win at the U.S. Open. And he also has the distance that I want for this week. He ranks 8th in the field in distance. He is 11th in approach over the past 50 rounds per Fantasy National. So I think that Woodland makes a lot of sense. I mentioned that Adam Scott was the second cheapest guy who was starting at 3 under par. Woodland is the cheapest at $8,800. He's got all the stats that I want. You know, I think that we'll finally get things to turn around here for Woodland. Looked a little bit better last week, so I think it makes sense to buy Woodland $8,800 and see if he can finally get back into that form that won in the U.S. Open.
I feel like we kind of say this every week with Gary Woodland, that, hey, maybe he'll return to form this week. He doesn't make any more cuts, but, hey, maybe this is the week. Top 30 players in the world are at this tournament. So he can't finish worse than 30, as you said, Jim. So hopefully Gary Woodland gets the job done here at the Tour Championship. One last player to get to who's also in the value tier, not always in the value tier, more of a mid-tier type of player. It's Paul Casey. You want to talk about solid, as you mentioned with Adam Scott, and a high-floor player. That's Paul Casey.
Yeah, the reason Paul Casey is $8,300 is because he's starting this event at just 2 under par, and that means that he is 8 strokes behind Justin Thomas. But for Paul Casey to pay off, you do not need a win. So comparing him to Justin Thomas is not really analogous, I wouldn't think. I think that he's only 4 shots behind Patrick Reed, and Patrick Reed is starting this event in 4th spot. So yeah, there are a lot of golfers between there, but Paul Casey's positioning is not as bad as his salary would indicate, and he is a great approach player, which is exactly what I want at Eastlake, because Paul Casey ranks 4th in this studly field in approach over the past 50 rounds, according to Fantasy National. And last week, we did see him gain 1.7 strokes off the tee, and that was another course where I want to emphasize distance. Casey still did well there, and that bodes well for me this weekend because Casey's not always someone who does super well at the distance courses, but seeing him be okay there last week was pretty encouraging for me. He is 8 strokes back. He is only 2 under par, but we know that Casey can do well in no cut events. He was awesome at the WGC Mexico this year. So for $8,300, Paul Casey can make a lot of things work. I think that he is better than his salary indicates, even when you account for his positioning. And I think that he has the upside to climb that leaderboard as well. So Paul Casey, $8,300, one of the guys I'll be building around most often for this weekend.
Absolutely. At this price, you should be building around Paul Casey. You heard from Jim exactly what he can do and we can expect from Casey. And you know, no matter what, the floor, it's just high enough that he's not going to let you down. A solid value player here this week at the Tour Championship. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Davis Matic of DailyRoto.com joins us to go over his favorite bets from the Tour Championship. Spoiler alert again, a lot of the names are the same. It's a good week for Jim Sonis and Davis Matic, which means it's a good week for you. Stick around. More on the way right after this. Back here with you on the FanDuel Hurry Up, Gregg Sussman, now joined by Davis Matic of DailyRoto.com. Davis, what's happening?
Very excited to cap off the Tour Championship. I hope my boy Rory is able to end the Tour season in the right way.
Absolutely. We'll see if he does get the job done. Let's start off with Big Game Brooks, though. He is one of the favorites in this tournament, 5-1. And Brooks Koepka, we talked about him earlier in DFS. Why do you like him to win the Tour Championship?
So basically, you kind of have to make a decision if you're betting this event. Am I going to bet Justin Thomas? And if you're going to bet Justin Thomas, you should not be betting anyone else. That should really be your only investment. But I am not betting on Justin Thomas. And Brooks is one of the guys who starts close enough to Justin Thomas in terms of the strokes at the beginning of the tournament that I think he's got a decent chance to win. And of course, he's top 10 on tour and all of the important strokes gain stuff. And with him being so close to JT and, this being the last event of the year and everything, we think that Brooks is going to bring the A game this week to Eastlake.
As we said before, hopefully it's the good Brooks that shows up. There's a lot on the line, so we expect he will, which means at 5-1, Brooks Koepka is worth betting on. Speaking of good versions of players, we need the good version of Rory McIlroy here this week, Davis. Enough of this crap.
You're preaching to the choir, Greg. You really are. So the last couple weeks, Rory has played okay. He hasn't played great, and he's starting 5 strokes back from Justin Thomas, and he's at 9-1 at the FanDuel Sportsbook. And if you ask yourself over 5 rounds, how often is Rory going to beat JT by 5 strokes? It certainly would not be a regular or a common occurrence, but I certainly could see it happening. And just if Justin Thomas has a bad opening round, these odds are going to shift so much that getting Rory at 9-1, beating half the field already in a short field, I do really like this wager.
Yeah, the wager makes sense just from the position that he is in. He's already beating half the field, like you said. If he can just make up a couple of the strokes on Brooks, on Justin Thomas, Rory's in a good spot. McIlroy, 9-1, a lot to like here. One of the most consistent players on the tour this year, Xander Schauffele, is a few strokes behind, but given how good he has been, especially in big tournaments, you have to like him at 29-1.
Yeah, so this is definitely, he's one of the guys who I forget if he is 5 or 6 strokes back, but he's definitely one of the guys who you'd look back at the pack and you'd say, okay, this guy, won the Tournament of Champions, second at the Masters, great results at all of the major championships this year, except for the Open Championship, good in WGCs. You just say his game is probably good enough that, if he has a hot Thursday, his odds are going to improve on the live betting. So, if you're making bets pre-tournament, Xander would be one of the key guys for me to wager on.
Absolutely. Xander's been one of the key guys you've been wagering on all season long, so why stop now? All right, let's continue, and let's move on to Adam Scott. We talked about him earlier with Jim Sonis when it came to DFS, but Adam Scott, one of the most solid players on the tour. Why do you like him here this week?
So Adam Scott is in that same range with Jon Rahm, Xander, and those category of golfers, and he's down there at 33-1. And I'm looking at this golf course, and I'm seeing lower than average expected winning scores. I think -9 was the winning score at this golf course last year. So a little bit less of a pitch and putt fest. And I think that probably suits Scott's game better than it does a lot of the other guys who are going to be playing the Tour Championship this week. And the bottom half of the field, we're not really looking at those guys too much. So if we're looking at guys who can just get hot, Scott loves to make those long putts. I think there's a pretty good chance that he could kind of catch fire and get near the top of the leaderboard this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Adam Scott, if that putter is working, he's in a good spot. I said it before with Jim. I'll say it again. He's in a good spot to do some damage if he could just get the putter working. Adam Scott, as solid as they come. You want a long shot? We got two for you. We'll start with Bryson DeChambeau. He's a guy you like to bet on. Just doesn't win all that much.
Yeah, so I mean, if we're gonna be sweating this out with this weird format that the FedEx Cup and the PGA Tour devised for these playoffs, I wanted to look at a couple guys who are way back, and I mean, we just saw Justin Thomas shoot -11 on Medina. So what do we really know about how hard these golf courses are? Do we really think that someone can't shoot a 60 at Eastlake? Like, why is that more impossible than shooting a 61 at Medina? And Bryson has the kind of game, we saw in the FedEx Cup playoffs last year. He's good in strong fields. He's good in small fields. And whenever Bryson has the putter going, because that's really the one thing that's inconsistent about his game, because he's hitting it to the same kinds of ranges all the time. Bryson would, to me, be just as likely to shoot a 60 as Justin Thomas or Dustin Johnson would at this tournament.
Bryson DeChambeau has the ability to get a really low score. You heard it from Davis. Why not, Bryson? Why not take the shot at such a large number? We know he's a lot back, but Bryson, well, when he's on, he's as good as anybody in the tournament. A lot to like with Bryson DeChambeau. One last long shot. It's Abraham Answer, one of your guys who's been a long shot before. He's in this field of 30 players. Why not Abe?
So Abraham Answer just got hot at exactly the right time. Basically, he kind of just played middling golf all year and crushed the two FedEx Cup playoff events. And so now he's sitting here and he's 5 strokes back of the lead. And when, he's priced half as deep as the guys he's right around, him and Adam Scott are the same amount of strokes behind, but Abraham Answer is 80-1. And, if you're kind of just throwing your hands up at this weird format and just saying, I don't really know who's going to win, but I would say of all the guys who are kind of in a range where it wouldn't be totally preposterous for them to win, Abraham Answer has the best number.
Yeah, why not? He's hot at the right time. That's kind of what it takes. Golf is a mental game. It's a streaky game. If Abraham Answer is as hot as any of these players, why can't he get the job done this week at the Tour Championship? That's going to do it for us here on the FanDuel Hurry Up. I want to thank my guests, both Jim Sonis and Davis Matic. Tomorrow, we return to football. Davis, it's you and me again tomorrow, now that I'm telling you.
Let's do it. Can't wait, man. It's been great.
Awesome. We look forward to it. Of course, football all week long. And Davis, this is actually our last golf show of the season. How you feeling?
The year would have been a lot better if Xander and Cantlay could have turned some of those seconds into first. Things would have been a lot different for me.
Hey, there's always next year, man. There's always next year. He's Davis Matic. I'm Gregg Sussman. Thanks so much for watching the FanDuel Hurry Up. We'll see you back here tomorrow for another edition.